Hello everyone. Welcome back to another The Raintime stream. This is part 3. Although I have, in fact, read this a few times before. But those times kept on getting restarted. For those who don't know, yep. And so now we're here, reading again. Let me make this easier. Alright. Okay. So. This is part 3. The first 2 times I read this, I got up to the part that I'm at right now. And then the other 2 times just before this one, I read up to the point I am right now. Although this time, the only difference is that I didn't restart my computer, or reset it, I mean. So, the data should still be there. Maybe it was the sickening air that hung in my room, or the realization that it was finally time to unenroll from university. That mind-killing institution that spirals around the truth in an endless dance of death. But after 3 lonely weeks of hiding in my room, I returned to Bremersburg. It's as if the number of tanning studios has only increased during my absence. Through a shop window, I discern a group of finely dressed men, smoking a hookah. And the sight arouses a reassuring revulsion in me, as it proves that, during my absence, the city has transformed into something that's essentially foreign to me. There's a tension hanging in the air, as if it could start raining any minute. "I'm carbon neutral," is written in green lettering on the back of a passing trolley bus. I can see the passengers packed tightly together, fighting for elbow room in the belly of the beast. In an attempt to find out what time it is, I mechanically take out my phone from my pocket, but before I've even registered its lifeless display, I remember that the battery has died more than 2 weeks ago. Wow. The only reason I still carry the thing around is that I feel naked without its weight resting securely against my outer thigh. Occasionally, I'm still startled by phantom tremors, a sudden shiver cascading through my loins as if it were vibrating in my pocket. Fortunately, it's an increasingly rare occurrence. A parking meter. 14:32. I've been awake for 15 hours. After a while, I find myself lost in the gracious revolutions of a curling willow that's growing in a gable garden. I absorb each of its branches individually, before stepping backwards in order to behold the tree in all its otherworldly beauty. I can see it all so clearly now. The familiar haze is gone. I haven't had alcohol since finishing the last of my old gull for breakfast. I'm handling withdrawal remarkably well. A traffic light turns to red, and the traffic that runs south over the inner ring drips into a tense halt. The driver of the black Peugeot next to me has left his engine running, filling the street with dark blue smoke. The exhaust gases makes my eyes water. I gasp for air, but this only causes my lungs to fill with more of the toxic fumes. And it feels like the city is penetrating me, stretching out into the depths of my respiratory system, making me into an extension of itself. I cough and leave the inner ring as quickly as possible. But even as I pass through the alleyways more than half an hour later, it still feels like something immeasurably great has been deep inside of me. Two girls are on their way. Their sweet perfume are intoxicating me. Oops, my bad. I forgot. It does that. What was it before? Let me see. Two girls are coming my way. There's I hope you read that before I missed it. Sorry about that. Their sweet perfumes are intoxicating to me. As they walk by, they suddenly start giggling between themselves, and there's something about their laughter that leaves me with the impression that it's me they're making fun of. I can feel my pace grow uncertain, and I'm reminded of a thought that I came up with once, but disregarded at the time. Suppose there is a human child that is raised by wolves. Now, suppose that child is never found by civilization, so that it always has to remain with the pack. What happens to that child? Does it grow into one of its fellow wolves, or does he find out after a while that he's fundamentally different? I pause for a second, because I want to hold on to the thought. I'm near this square and might be distracted when I reach it. Of course, it's not about external differences, because everyone knows that wolves have sharper teeth and better sense of smell than humans. But what happens to the child internally? Does he learn to behave like a wolf? To talk like a wolf? Does he learn to think like a wolf? If a person has no peers to mirror himself to, how will he ever know whether he is human or wolf? Is there something unalienably human about us all that always rises to the surface, even in total isolation? The girls are gone now, out of sight. Now that the holidays are over, the square leaves a deserted impression, gaping in the middle of the city like a swollen abscess. My fears have been unfounded. Because the stench and perfume is still hanging in my nostrils, I entertain the thought of returning to Ryberry. Why am I not able to hear the sound? Because the stench of cars and perfume is still hanging in my nostrils, I entertain the thought of returning to Ryberry. But I won't in the end, and it isn't better that way. Why sound's not working? Why is that music volume? But I won't in the end, as it isn't better in any way. Ryberry is connected to the city through a 3-mile pipeline that bumps around noxious fumes 24 hours a day in an infallible rhythm of 58 explosions per second. The rhythm controls everything: the streets, the houses, even my lungs. The fuck? I could have sworn I saw someone outside. Someone in the neighbor's yard, but I didn't see anybody go on the porch. The porch is the only way through back in the house. Who the hell was that? Wherever I may wander. Oh. That looked like a different person. I stopped by the liquor store to purchase a bottle of Tanqueray. A flight of pigeons flitters through the shopping street, the sound of their wings reminiscent of a huge timepiece that slowly set in motion. Since I've made up my mind to unenroll, I head towards the university quarter. The chorus of the latest hits by Mother Band is blasting from a clothing store nearby. Slaves to our reality, victims of mortality. And lead singer keeps mumbling in a monotone voice. Slaves to our reality, victims of mortality. I laugh at its stupidity. There's something off about pop songs, no matter how meaningful their lyrics try to be. The nagging 4x4 signature always makes them sound tacky. We've become spoiled children, ruminating disinterestedly on our shallow existence. The weak excuse for a conversation I had with Lars on New Year's Eve feels like a long time ago. I resign myself to the fact that I may never have to face him again. In the end, I'm probably more of a poet than a philosopher. No longer do I feel the need to conjure earth-shattering paradigms, because if you look closely, you'll see there's congruence in everything around us. At first, I wanted to lead nations, but now I'd be content to even help one person find their way. The students of this city are like laborers. At night, they drink away the doctrines that they've internalized during the daytime, because their implications sound entirely too alienating to be true. And their lectures are teachers of oblivion. The more thoroughly their students prove they haven't understood the first thing of their coursework, the higher their marks, and the more striking the letters of recommendation that accompany their diplomas. The only letter of recommendation I need is one stating that I have learned all and therefore nothing. You can address it to my ruination, Professor. The rock song turns into a baby, blasting from the shop next door, which in turn melts seamlessly into some serious sounding hip hop from the jeans store opposite the street. All tunes have the same rhythm of the flapping of pigeons and the waves of the sea. I realize that a 4x4 signature beat must resound continuously throughout existence, pulling all of life along with it, everywhere in the world, into the darkest depths of the ocean. We're closing in a minute, he says kindly. But I can squeeze you in if you're quick. It's the same guy I spoke to last time, but for some reason he doesn't seem to recognize me. I've come to unenroll, I say. You can do that online. One click and you're rid of us for good. I don't have internet access at the moment, I reply. Can't we just do it here? The office is brightly lit with fluorescent lights. It's situated in a corner of the Faculty of Literature, overlooking a narrow courtyard where students can smoke. Why is it so loud? Stop being loud. Loud. But no one smokes anymore. Wish I had the guts, he remarks comfortingly, as he looks me up in the system. I see you still have a few library fees. Oh boy, he whispers. It's a total of $637.95. Do you want me to pay that right now? You can also do it in installments. Send me an invoice, I mutter. He nods understandingly and fidgets about on his computer for a bit. Well, that's that, he concludes. Then he pauses for a moment. Say, the university is curious about what motivates students to deregister prematurely. Is it okay if we email you a short questionnaire? I think you can win something. I don't have the internet, I remind him. He looks fidgety, as if confused. Well, try enrolling for another major next year, he starts. You can probably transfer some of your points. I don't have any points, I interrupt him with a smile. But what are you going to do? He asks me, no longer capable of concealing his morbid curiosity. Just go out and look for a job? A subtle pride washes over me as I relish in the thought that I can't have worked more than 5 combined hours in my entire life. However, I don't feel like feeding his pity. Nah, I've made it big. Built my own company. Few people working under me now. It's running pretty well. For a moment, he doesn't seem to believe me. But then a smile appears on his face and he claps his hands a few times in slow motion. That's great, man. So what line of business are you in? Oh, just e-commerce. We sell underwear for overweight people, I smile. He pauses. I thought you said you didn't have internet. I'm becoming careless. The games are starting to bore me. A huge weight falls off my shoulders as I leave the university quarter, like I've finally silenced a small gnawing part of my conscience, of which nothing remains other than a slight residing disappointment, a lingering trace of sadness that becomes more diluted with every sip I take. It's growing darker. The pollution from the cars doesn't bother me anymore. And it's in a euphoric high that I walk along the ring road. The endless stream of tests and obligations that has made up my life so far has finally come to an abrupt end. It feels as though existence itself has gained new quality. There's an immediate necessity within me now. I have nothing to do, nowhere to go. I could either persist here for a second or remain forever. I'm a nuclear bomb, lying in a silo that might lie dormant until the end of days, but equally has the potential to wreak apocalyptic devastation at least than a moment's notice. At less than a moment's notice. I kick a piece of plastic onto the road, and a motorist honks at me furiously. I'm disappointed he won't even come out of his car. Coward. I've never really fought in my life. Although it's getting late, I'm starting to feel fit. A little drunk even, but the kind of drunk that gets you riled up. I'll have to eat something soon to keep me going. I bend off towards the harbor. The city is steeped in a mysterious aura. It's as if the streets are full of new possibilities and adventures hidden behind every lamppost. I'm no longer annoyed by the prying eyes of the passerbys. I take my bottle from its bag and set it to my lips. The bittersweet spice rushes down my throat, casting a golden sheen over my eyes that sands off the sharper edges. And as I slip the narrow bottle back into my inner pocket, the catenary wires of the trolley buses suddenly take up all my attention, causing me to unintentionally drop the empty bag to the street. I'm fascinated by the sharpness with which the wires are spun across the twilight sky. They're drawn so meticulously, splitting up the vibrant clouds like cheese wire. And I'm so completely overcome by emotion that I turn back to pick up the plastic bag I just dropped. The screeching of seagulls resounds in the distance. When I arrive in the harbor, I see them circling above an elderly man who's sprinkling out bread. I walk up to the breakwater. A fresh evening wind is blowing toward me. No ships to be seen. The sky's shining a bright orange now. The sun's floating just above the horizon, as if it has always been hanging there. I look over to the wind farm. The turbines are colored pitch black by the backlight from the dying sun. Their blades are spinning harmlessly, peacefully, like giant bowling pins. I avert my eyes in an attempt to save the image to memory. And for a while I stand and watch the sun crawl closer towards the horizon, until it eventually disappears, millimeter by millimeter, behind the earth. Then the tears come to my eyes, and I let out a shiver that cascades down my back, enclosing my entire body. The screams of the gulls grow fainter and fainter, and then I hear a noise in the distance. Lost in thought, I reach a large E-Mart It must be past dinner time now. I feel a slight reluctance to enter the store, but proceed anyway, as everything here closes at 9 and I have no idea when that will be. I'm greeted at the door by a tottering vagrant who tries to sell me a newspaper. He's intoxicated, visibly drunk, something that pleases me greatly. And I'm not in the least bit hungry. With great effort, I try to find something I'm able to eat, but the matter seems of such triviality that I don't even want to acknowledge it. Eventually, I pick up a few products, quite at random, and proceed towards checkout. It's nothing special. A bag of chips, some potato salad, a roll of custard creams, processed cheese. Lying on the conveyor belt, they create an unreal impression, as if they aren't food at all, but extraterrestrial plastic objects. As I leave the store, the vagrant addresses me. "Hey man, how'd you do in there?" he roars enthusiastically. "Want a paper?" But there's something off about the man. It's like he's acting more drunk than he actually is. He's putting on a show to sell more newspapers. "Are you drunk?" I ask. "No, man," he laughs. "Just happy. How are you doing? I'm Eddie." He holds out his hand, but I decline to shake it. I do, however, hand him my bag of groceries. "Are you hungry, Eddie?" I ask. "You can have these if you want." First, he casts me a suspicious glance, but then he takes the bag and starts evaluating its contents. "You know what? I'm not really that hungry," he replies after a while. "But I'll have those cookies." He fishes the packet of custard creams from the bag and hands the rest back to me. I nod, but as I'm about to walk away, I suddenly realize the whole absurdity of the situation. I turn around and grab the packet from his hands. "What? No, Eddie, that's not how it works," I shout at him. "I'm offering you this food because you're hungry, so you're not just taking the creams from the bag. If you really were hungry, you'd take everything. It's all or nothing. You can't cherry pick your offerings." I put the custard creams back in with the other groceries. At first, Eddie seems taken aback, but then a cocky, aggravated expression appears on his withered face. "You can keep those cookies, loser," he yells, his voice breaking. "Just give me some money, I'm not an animal." I turn my back on him. If you're not an animal, you're not having cookies. What? I carry the bag along for 2 blocks, until its weight starts pulling me down. Then, I dump everything in a gray garbage can, before changing my mind and saving the packet of custard creams. I take one out and place it on my tongue, where it slowly dissolves into a mush of dough and cream, till I swallow it, disgustedly. The rest of the packet I cast amidst a group of seagulls, who tear into it delightedly. In the blink of an eye, they reduce it to crumbs, which, a few seconds later, are swept away in a whirlwind of wings, when I throw myself upon them. I head southwards, hoping to find a street that leads back to the inner ring. The apartment buildings here don't feel familiar anymore. I see a canal, filled with ink-black water. There isn't even any duckweed there. Wristwatches and pop music. Through their iron cadence, they have hammered into us the notion that everything happens simultaneously. That we all live at the same time, and that the world is a giant soap opera, in which millions of individuals exist concurrently. But what nonsense that is to get all warm and fuzzy, thinking that people are currently living other lives than I am. As if the here and now isn't enough. People drift in and out of my life, like supporting characters in some kind of epic poem. I wonder what happens if I cast them all aside. Shut everything and everyone out, till I'm the only one left. There's a thought. A tough task ahead. One that I'll have to take care of, all by myself. I've played the friendly eccentric for far too long. I have to take my responsibility, put my words into action. Rows of apartment buildings, there seems to be no end to them. The fishermen of Hornerdam must have sailed here, a few meters above where I'm walking. It's strange how easily people bridge spatial distance when creating a bond of community, while far more trivial constructs like time are deemed insurmountable. We feel related to our countrymen, who live miles away from us, but we forget our own ancestors. I owe my life to those that came before me. Their blood still flows through my veins, albeit in diluted form. I show more resemblance to them, probably, than to the people that dwell in Earth in this day and age. How I long to return to a time when people were a little more pure. In 20 years' time, this will all be fields. I love bread, but we don't get it often. We had potatoes this morning. The sun's reflecting on the water. I can see the island looming in the distance. It takes a while before we get there. It always takes longer than I remember. We sail a boat without an engine. It's an old boat. We don't have money for a new one. And it's no use anyway. In 20 years' time, this will all be fields. When we'll all become farmers. Then we'll all become farmers. It smells of resin. Water hits the prow of the ship. Today was a good day for fishing. We still have a debt to pay off. My father doesn't talk about money much, but I think he's worried. He's always silent during fishing trips. The two of us aren't enough to man the boat, actually. But we don't have any more boys at home, and sometimes we hardly catch enough fish to sell. My uncle sails with my cousin Lambert. Lambert is older than me, but my father is the strongest. That's why we sail together. In 3 years' time, my little brother will be old enough to come along, but he might have to stay in school. When he grows up, there won't be any fishermen left. In 20 years' time, this will all be fields. Many are registering to work on the dam. I might too, when I'm old enough. They're looking for strong younger men. My father doesn't talk about it, but he's glad that there will at least be work later. There's nothing you can do, he says. Those matters aren't for us to decide. They're going to get their way sooner or later. If they drain the sea, then everything's gone. It'd be better to sell the cutter now and move to one of the new polders. My father's slaving away with the boom. Broom? Maybe? I don't know. We really need another pair of hands on deck. What's a boom? A crowd of gulls is trailing our ship, hungry for treats. We'll be entering the port soon. These are wonderful moments with the sun shining on my arms. There really isn't much to do. I breathe the fresh air in the fresh sea air deep into my lungs. It's the scent of fish. The scent of life. We've been fishing on the sea for so long, it's impossible to imagine it not being here. What will happen to our island? Will it become a mountain, rising out above the meadows? I wonder if we'll slowly watch the water drain away, or if it'll just be gone one morning. And what will the seabed look like when it's all open? Could you walk from here to Amsterdam? The fish auction is looming in the distance. I look at the waves roaring between me and the shore. Soon, it won't be a sea of water that lies here, but a sea of golden grain. Golden grain, a waving wheat and rustling corn. Some matters aren't for us to decide, even if we want to. William. Wake up, William. You have dwelled as a fisher among men for too long. Follow me, and I'll return you to the sea. I find myself sitting on a bench by a gas station. A blue minivan stops nearby. A morbidly obese woman, who can't be older than 30, rolls open her car window, causing the sound of her radio to spill out over the streets. With one movement of her flapping arm, she dumps the contents of her ashtray onto the side of the road, before taking off into the night. A dust cloud of putrid stale ash blows in my direction, making me retch. To think that the fishers lost their livelihood for this. It was destroyed for the lowlives and their ashtrays, the cocksure bastards that think they own the place. Time after time, we choose the many over the few, without regard for dignity. The birth of a nation seldom passes without bloodshed. I get up and head back towards the center. The city is pulsating with internal combustion and electricity that permeates everything. It's that sensation again that has been plaguing me over the last few months. It's returned in an unprecedentedly pure form. As if time itself is speeding up, the entire city appears to be moving. The sound of cars and the shapes of the houses fuse together to attain a glowing beauty that I have never witnessed before. And the white sky and the gray stones clash into monochrome contrast, forming a collage of textures that jump out from the canvas. The metropolis isn't spatial anymore. It's not a landscape, nor an obstacle. It's purely itself. Something of immeasurable proportions which can be contained within the palm of my hand. Nothing hidden. All is curious, interesting, beautiful. The black behind the countless windows has become penetrable, as if it may as well have been illuminated. I am aware of every single detail of my environment. The tower blocks behind me appear to be breathing, as if they were alive. The overpass to my right seems incorruptible in its concrete majesty, like a memorial to all the angels that have taken flight from it. I observe the birds flying through the air, the reeds, the billboards, a trampled Coke can, 2 aspens, side by side. The edges of the large cloud cover hanging over me are beginning to gray, shading all its revolutions and patterns of unprecedented stratification. One more sip. I'm silenced by the intensity of it all. I register every breath of wind as it touches my skin. It smells so fresh. The sensory overload makes my head run wild. I can envision myself walking through a botanical garden. A child still, I'm wearing an itchy sweater that I got for my birthday. The colors are pale, like in an old film. I'm horsing around, and then I'm quiet again. I seem uncomfortable. We must be in a greenhouse, because there's a large organ pipe cactus next to me. The light shines through my dark blonde hair. I'm looking back at myself, an annoyed expression on my face. Suddenly, we drift closer and closer. We collide. The deafening sound of the car horn shakes me from my dream. I stand there for a while, bent forward and shivering, overwhelmed by an overpowering fatigue. I trip, lose my balance, and stumble away from the street, catching myself against the facade of a building. From where I'm standing, I can see the entire north side of the inner ring. Ahead of me, the used tower rises, a dark, looming colossus that casts a pitch-black silhouette against the clear night sky. For a moment, it's as if I see stars sparkling around its crown. But then I realize that they're warning lights for passing planes. I slide down to the ground, where I remain motionless. The pavement feels cold and damp against my tired limbs, but after a while, the heat of my body warms up the moisture that is soaked into my clothes, creating a comfortable layer of protection. A trolley bus trundles by, its poles scanning the catenary wires like the feelers of a monstrous insect. Church bells begin to toll. I place my hands against my ears to block out the sound, but involuntarily I hear 3 or 4 strokes. I have no idea what I'll do tomorrow. I'm nodding with fatigue. Are you okay? A drunken voice calls out. I look up to see the dark figure of a man trying to talk to me. He has a few friends with him who are watching from a distance. Yeah, no problem, I growl. Can we take you someplace? He asks. His manner of speech, though slurred, betrays genuine concern. His friends are giggling stupidly in the background. Stupidly. I'm okay. You can leave me alone, I reply in a loud, stable voice, to make it abundantly clear that there is nothing wrong with me. He looks me over one last time before returning to his friends. Who the fuck was that? I hear a female voice screech. Just a lost sheep, he replies. They burst out in a high-pitched shrieks and move on. Those voices again. Those piercing howls. Ridicule's always the right response, if your world's a comedy. There's nothing serious left. One day, I'll wipe the smiles off their faces. The wind starts to blow. I close my jacket. I look up towards the moon, but the cloud covers too thick to see anything. The Hughes Tower appears even larger from the gutter. It has a false shine over it, as if it were painted onto the sky. In the corner of my eye, I see a small, hunchbacked figure coming my way. It's moving in a dwarfish manner, and has a terribly twisted face, with wrinkled skin and pointed ears. Frightened, I turn to face it, to realize that it's just a plant, dancing in the wind. The lack of sleep must be starting to affect me. I doze off, and picture a cutter boat, loaded with grain, leaving the harbor under full sail to cast off its golden cargo into the blue depths of the ocean. Exhaust gases Exhaust gases. The dream fades away. The bells toll again. Two lines begin dancing before my eyes, parallel to each other. One is brown, the other's red. They're bent in strange angles. Sometimes they appear together and sometimes apart. They're forming patterns, a triangle, a T. But they never ever touch. And then the gray cat from Ryberry passes by. He curls down in front of me and speaks in his deep baritone voice. It seems to all make sense, what he's telling me. Beautiful, terrible sense. My eyes fill with tears. Yes, yes, I shout at him enthusiastically. That's what I've always wanted to say. But he's gone. What time is it? My brow's wet. I'm awake again, still lying against the facade. Fragments of a starless night sky are visible through the white clouds. While I'm fighting to stay awake, I try to recall the exact words that the cat spoke to me in my dream. But all I can remember are the two dancing lines, and the feeling that something was absolutely perfectly in place. I search my memory for remnants of the lost dream. Was it about the university? About Jasmine? About my mother, maybe? The only thing that keeps coming back are those lines, brown and red, jumping to and fro with flashing lights in the background, enough to drive anyone insane. Could that be the reason I felt so happy? I can't have slept for more than half an hour and feel more tired than ever. Half-heartedly, I attempt to calculate how long I've been out of bed. Probably more than 24 hours. That's a good sign. Then everything starts anew. A loud cry. It's a short exclamation, a single burst of noise without cause or echo. It sounded like it came from close by. I look around, but the streets are empty. Clouds are drifting across the firmament at tremendous speeds. At this pace, a cleared sky might come before sunrise. I'm curious to see what kind of moon we have. About to get up from the ground, I drink a little, but then I notice some movement to my left. I freeze. For about 3 seconds, I'm staring into the eyes of the most terrifying horror I've ever seen. It's squatting, tensely, a few feet away as if ready for attack, teeth glistening with mucus. It's only when my eyes have adjusted to the dark that I realize it's just a motorcycle, wrapped in a black cover. I pick myself up and cross the road. I can see the university quarter in the distance. The bottle feels cold in my inner pocket. And soon I grow accustomed to their gruesome figures, to their gruesome features. The demons that are hidden in every corner of this god-forgotten city, clinging to the gutters like silent gargoyles, motionless until I turn my back on them, after which they perform a fiendish shadow dance in my peripheral vision. I pass straight under the lamp post in an attempt to witness as little of the dark as possible. As long as I focus my gaze on a single point, they tend to stay away. For some time now, a pressure has been building in my lower abdomen. As I sway from the illuminated path, I feel a dizziness coming over me. I dive into a back street. I force myself to pee. But before I finish, I hear something behind me. It's the clicking of heels on stone. I pinch the flow, sending drops of urine flying over my right hand, and hurry away from the sound. After turning a corner, I end up in an alley that leads towards the central square. I finish what I started in a shallow porch. My hand smells, so I splash some liquor over it in an attempt to disinfect the contaminated limb. As I continue onward, I hear those footsteps again. Far away at first, but she's approaching rapidly. Her clothing style and pink accessories radiate mindless conformity. A thick layer of foundation covers her coarse facial features. That face. That potato face. There's something strikingly repulsive about it. Her rough, asymmetrical mouth, her incestuous cheekbones, all coated in thick tangerine paint. evoke memories of embalmed pharaohs and laid-out crash victims. Our eyes meet, and I imagine I am able to discern an expression of scorn in her face. The makeup makes it so hard to be sure, but there's unmistakably something there, and it becomes clearer the closer she gets. She passes. I smell that scent again. That sweet, dank fragrance. And as the distance between us grows, I'm left with the conviction that she positively despises me. That woman, she was looking down on me. I could read it in her body language. And somehow I'm left wondering what she'd base such an opinion on. Was it her stunted mind she'd identify as a depictable trait, as a despicable trait in me? A little respect? Is that too much to ask for? Or at least a little fear? It's before sunrise, after all, and she's all alone. She could easily be scared of me. She must regard me as a child, a goody, a clown. What kind of twisted thoughts possess that girl? For her to look at me with that arrogant expression on her face. What if I had bad intentions? As anger rises within me, I turn around to take a final look at the woman. But to my surprise, I see that she's staring after me, bemusedly. As soon as she notices that I've turned around, she quickly moves away. What's so fascinating about me that makes people stare and giggle? There must be something wrong. I've turned into a drooling idiot. And that while it's actually me that should be looking down on them. I'll wipe that smug grin off her face. And in 5 steps, I've bridged the distance. I grab her by her suede jacket, which feels soft and fragile to my touch, as though it were her bare skin. She doesn't scream as I drag her into the porch where I just urinated, and I force her up against the wall, sliding her sideways along the brickwork, until she comes to a shivering halt against my drainpipe. She's on the ground, my knees in her back, a doll in my clutches. And for an instant, for half a second, it's as if I'm no longer there. Please. Please, she stammers. I turn her face towards the light to see her twisted features, her tearing eyes. And for some reason, her gaze makes me shrink back. It isn't so much the look of despair that touches me, but rather something I'll describe as resignation. Her eyes betray the tired conviction that the harm has already been done. She isn't ungrateful or arrogant. She's just a victim, like all of us. It's not her fault. I let go of her. It takes her a while to realize that she's free, and she runs away silently. It's so incredibly hot. My pocket vibrates and keeps on vibrating. Even after I take out the plastic parasite, the dead thing keeps on humming inexplicably in my hand. With all of my strength, I hurl the phone against the pavement, and it's as if the last wires of domination finally slips away when I leave the broken circuit boards behind. I have nowhere to go. I walk back towards the N723. If I go to bed now, I'll wake up in about 16 hours, and everything will turn out to be a dream. But I'm too clear of mind to fool myself like that. In 20 minutes, she'll have passed my description to the police, so that they can start hunting me down. My heart's pounding. If something's to happen in my life, something profound and all-changing, it must be now. The mechanism has been set in motion. I take out the bottle, and as I fill my mouth with liquor, the warm glow spreads throughout my body again, making the fear all that more manageable. My strength has become tensile. I can do something. The night isn't over yet. I take off my jacket and throw it into a garbage can, and finish the last of the gin. The pressure on my eyes is increasing. My head is filled with thoughts, the origin of which I can hardly trace. Images appear on my retina, rooted there like atavisms waiting to be revelated. They turn me into a vehicle of age-old thoughts and urges. A red mist comes over me. A feverish dream of visions and sensations of the greatest kind. This ball on which we live, there where it's warm in winter and where the night sky shines a pearly white. It rains here in January because the snow melts high up in the atmosphere long before it reaches the ground. It changes something in people, makes them preoccupied with facts and quips and trivialities. They seem oblivious to all the aberrations that surrounds us. How there's something wrong with the lake. The lake was once a sea. As if in taming something so large, they also tame the people that live around it. Certain things are better left alone. They don't willingly submit to the games of man, but develop a grudge that slowly waxes and sleeps under the soil for decades. Hunger and time clothe me now, and write the history of the island. I wonder what the new century has in store for us. What wars will rage and what atrocities will be committed. What turbines and skyscrapers of today will form the ruins of the future. Majoring in literature will help you fulfill your true potential, they told me at college introduction. But like a storm, I will rage over the battlefields of Europe, looking for survivors to add to my ranks. I try not to think about the poor woman anymore. She was just a victim. A martyr. Just like you, Jasmine. Without you, it would have never come to this. I wouldn't be able to think what I'm thinking now. Behind every great man stands a far greater woman. Far greater, no matter how little they are. My stomach curdles with hunger. It's the first time in months that I feel that lonely sensation haunting through my innards again, and it consoles me, because it must mean that I'm alive. It's getting warmer, and the sleep deprivation doesn't bother me anymore. Morning rush hour has started on the motorway, and 100,000 cars charge by. embodying speed and steel romanticism, like devils born from the wombs of iron maidens. They kick up whirlwinds that blow dirt and crumbs of asphalt in my eyes. The tears turn everything into a haze. The sun is rising. I look at my left hand, and to my astonishment, it appears to be completely covered in blood. But when I turn around, I see the vermilion-colored sunlight reflected in the windows of a caravan of automobiles, bathing my entire body in the deepest red. The sun, which I saw setting into a bed of immaculate orange just a heartbeat ago, has returned from its cosmic voyage to cast its beams upon an earth that has forever changed. A tropical wind plays through my shirt and blows my hair backwards. The rustling of fields to my right merges with the noises on the road into a continuous tone that seems to be swelling in inexplicable crescendo. I'm hot. So terribly hot that I strip down to the waist. The climate here has become so mild that winters pass by unnoticeably. There isn't any real cold anymore. Winter has degenerated into an unrelenting raintime. And suddenly, everything falls into place and becomes clearer than ever before. Ever since the water turned brackish, we've become lazy and content. They drained the beautiful sea to make place for shopping malls and apartment buildings, where the masses dwell. But it's not real. The polder's no more than a shadow world. Only death breeds in the stagnant lake. And together with the sea, the people's spirit has washed away. We're sedentary now, preoccupied, divided. No common cry sounds from our mouths. But I can change it all. Only I, now, can bring this land back to what it used to be. I can teach them, those pasty lowlives, what it means to really live. I want to be the breach in the dike that sets forth a deluge to cleanse this muddy soil once and for all. And as the sun raises higher above the horizon, its beams grow brighter. They color a golden red that reflects on the asphalt before me, turning the tarmac into a river of ruby that flows straight through the fields. It's strange, a river here in the polder, for where can all the water run off to? This must be the great flood I predicted. Today, the sun rises for the last time over Bremersburg. In the course of the day, the ocean will recapture the last remaining acres of land from humanity. We'll be dependent on each other again, fighting like pioneers of old against a common enemy of the sea. The new light smiles upon me triumphantly. Too long I've journeyed through inhospitable darkness, worried about futilities, slept and waited. But soon the entire nation will bathe in an eternal cleansing water. To the Ark! And the exhausts of the endless rows of cars fit together like a giant organ. The roars of their engines grow louder and louder until they distort into a sacred interplay that brings my entire being into a state of divine ecstasy. Dissonant sound that vaguely recalled the forgotten symphonies of Diepenbrock. My lungs fill slowly with unfiltered fumes, but it doesn't bother me anymore. The circumstances are perfect now. The morning red casually spreading, plunging the entire motorway into an unreal sheen. And when I turn around, I see Bremersburg. The apartment buildings, the towers, the canals of the forsaken city. They're all colored bright red by the dawning sun, as if it were a scene from hell. And in the distance, something catches my attention. It's a light blue sedan traveling my way. I capture a glimpse of the driver. She's in her early 30s. Dark brown hair, youthful features. She seems so familiar. From the beginning of the game. I must have stored her face somewhere deep in my subconscious, because she answers perfectly to all the desires coursing through my poor body. This is the sign I've been searching for. She must have always known. Always been here. Waiting for me to finally blossom. All I feel is an irresistible urge to be with her. Part 5. Colors float past the window panes, drifting along the facade like a fog, and on into the distance, where they smash against a car fender, the cheeks of a passing girl, a cypress tree, its needles spreading and emboldening an emboldening odor. They blow further over fields, over water, and over fields again, where a train goes by. And with metric resound, it deeply traverses the plains while the landscape appears to distort. Mountains arise. A little springbok adorns her blouse. Would you like something with that? A pastry, maybe. No, I shouldn't. Thank you very much, ma'am. The carriage passes villages, a graveyard, an old monument shining beautifully in the sun, although its bronze plaque hasn't been maintained in ages, and the hundreds of names have faded away. But the grass has been carefully tended to. The closer I get, the more the green carpet transforms into a crawling microcosm, teeming with industrious life. Blades stand upright, like shards of glass, like obelisks, huge pillars of a lost civilization that hold up the firmament and protect the hidden world against the danger from the skies. Beams of deathly radiation emanating shiftingly from the heavens in shades of white and yellow. The rays scissor and separate, to dance around the invisible disc until they regroup on the other side. And the colors shoot off through the cities, across meadows, along roads, farther, faster, through, along, around, past, into infinite, eternal all. All. Everything. Yes. Yes, indeed. Something stirs. The landscape fades. A rhombus appears that remains lingering in my field of vision for days on end. Very gradually, impressions arise behind the figure. But the moment I concentrate on them, they start to fade away. The kite remains blurry, blinking at times, my only anchor point in this endless light world. I stare at it for 1,000 breaths until my senses grow weary and it begins to break apart. By the time I've regained my strength, it's gone. I remain silent for a very long time, afraid that I'll damage something irreparably if I exert myself too much. I'm in absolute stasis, perceiving nothing, experiencing nothing. No pain, no cold, no hunger. Only the briefest of thoughts pass through my mind. And due to the total absence of external influences, I drift towards a place devoid of everything. It's the place that I once described, lazing in my room in Ryberry, as a realm of golden grain. But now that I've returned, I no longer hear the rustling of fields. This world is empty now. Even the sensations I felt of peace and warmth are missing. But it's undeniably the same place. I remain like this for an eternity, floating in sublime equilibrium, until the outside world gradually invades again. It starts as a gentle throbbing, as if there's something stuck somewhere in my bloodstream. I try to ignore it, but it swells, starting to pool, bringing me into a state of unrest. After a while, it's no longer tenable, and I surrender. Paradise escapes me. My body still works. Something stirs for only a second. The faculty building looks exactly like my old school. I've neglected my studies for so long now, while there's an exam coming up this week. Time to open up group theory number 3. The paradox, through expressing the intention of leading us towards a decentralized representation of praxis, through the formation of a multitude of physical representations opposing a more complex analysis from the point of view of its embedded conception, is that in the end any attempt to complete a dialectical realization of the constructs as a construct in itself constitutes beyondness. Considering the totality of the whole is nonetheless invalid, because the reform of this decision as a sovereign breach of the principle of representation is essentially opposed to the self-imposed framework of the transcendent increase, barring Boderberg's reservations. It is probably Boderberg himself who is conscious of of this, a protagonist of an unlimited indisputability, arisen from the field of tension between possibility and promise. I don't have to turn the pages or even look at the paper, as quickly as the words fly over my retina. It's important to bear in mind here that, since there is no specified foundation for such an urbanization, the congruent development of a luminous sphere is context-dependent here, regardless of any attempt to align it, since the river run's tracks doesn't assume reduced relativity, taking into account a quantifiable development in relation to the subject, in multiple finitudes, identical. The invigilator has her hair in a butter braid, with a chast cut. Could it be an issue that I'm still studying during the exam? I need to hide my book somewhere, under my chair or in the floor. Almost forgot to put my name on the paper. Cattle is grazing between the islands. I think I could do it. Ugh. The paint is so beautiful. Could paint so beautifully. I look around and see. A wasteland. Recently, the images have been lasting longer. I'm in multiple places at the same time. In the Otter, at the square, my room, the faculty building at the N723. All simultaneously. I feel the sea breeze and smell my bed. All the places seem so palpable, so carefully arranged, sorted by location. The impressions are expanding steadily. I'm all over the city, in every street, in Ryberry, Abbotsford, in places I've never visited before but that still feel familiar, as if I've always known what they look like. I hear words spoken in unknown tongues, and travel through alien worlds and deserted wastelands. The more accustomed I become to the experiences, the faster they increase in scope. I explore the deepest troughs of the ocean, climb the highest mountains. Reaching as far as the moon and the stars beyond the Milky Way, into galaxies of immeasurable size. Troughs. With the sun as a pinprick in all-encompassing darkness. Suddenly somewhere a light comes on. I gave you a dog to look after, William. But what did you do with it? You got him drunk and dragged him along in your inexorable path of destruction. I didn't mean to. I wanted to help him. That poor animal! He had a look in his eyes. I wanted to show him a better world. A better world? What would you know of those matters? I wouldn't. Indeed, you failed. I gave you a dog and a woman to look after. What more could a man want? They're both gone now. I've been feeling so ineffectual lately, as if the world weren't real. I wanted... Nonsense! Look at me, William! The cat's staring at me from behind the curtain, with piercing, furious eyes. His short-haired coat is shining like a glass exoskeleton. I didn't want her. This is not the time to apologize. Nothing you say can make it right. And to think how superior you felt. You're a murderer. Lower than the dogs. You wanted to be a wolf? Well, forget it. She was so delicate. Beautiful, like a butterfly on a summer's day. I only touched her once. Butterflies break when you grab for them. Some things can't be repaired after they break. I had so much faith in you, William. Maybe it's not over yet, Cat. No! Get that out of your head. You've had enough. I'm turning off the lights. Go back to sleep. But go think about what you've done. I don't want to hear you anymore. Just one more thing. That night before it happened, what did you say to me in my dream back then? I don't know what you're talking about. While I was sleeping on the floor, you said something to me. Something I agreed with tremendously, but I've forgotten. What was it again? Sleeping on the floor? You could have caught a cold, and I don't remember it at all. But it was probably a different cat. And with 2 jumps, he's through the door. It's growing dark around me again, and I prepare for a long night. I'm in the city, but the streets are filled with blind facades, as far as the eye can see. The buildings are unfinished, reduced to simple geometric shapes. As if wandering further through the faceless city, the colors begin to fall apart. The distinction between buildings and air disappears. Everything around me morphs into a pure black canvas onto which architecture is drawn in a thin white line. My eyes are heavy, and it's by touch alone that I further explore the strange world. But now that I'm blind, my sense of touch appears to reveal much more detail than I could ever see. The buildings have cold windows with warm plastic frames. As I feel the rough brick walls with my fingers, the dead skin rubs off my hands. The canals are wet and the cars are hard, and the asphalt of the road feels sticky. But the vegetation, it's as soft as fabric. The plants and the shrubs feel like woven textile, with yarn that's sometimes fluffy and sometimes smooth. Even the bark of the trees emit a warm, leathery sensation. I wrap myself in the cozy opulence and dwell through the labyrinths of patterns that the canvases show me. It's so comfortable that I drift away. Somewhere, a light comes on. It's almost funny to imagine what happened. So many a drunken night has gone by, with me ending up in bed safely. The curtains around my bed are a white polyester. I imagine the materials sliding along my skin, like touching a wet shower curtain with your body. And now my bed linen is made of white synthetic sheets that I slowly drown in, unable to get out. The whole world reduced to a spotless sheet of plastic. When you've been sleeping for a very long time, you end up painfully aware that your body leads a life of its own. The tubes in my nose and wrist constantly remind me that I've been treated like an object for weeks, looked after by machines. It must have been quite a show when they scraped me off the tarmac. I hope traffic wasn't held up for too long. I've been trying to convince myself that I've lost my memory. At first it was actually true, but in the meantime so much has returned that I've resorted to fooling myself. At times I wonder if they know what happened. But only thinking about it fills me with panic. And then I steer my mind away from the subject, as to not delay my recovery. A woman is at my bedside. At first, I just sensed a solitary presence hanging in the air. Every time she'd been. But today I was awake when she visited. I feigned sleep because the confrontation seemed too much for me now. I have no idea what she knows. I haven't seen any of my family or friends yet, but that woman keeps returning. She leaves little bits of paper on my bed. I want to study them, but the nurse keeps throwing them away. She has curly black hair and an earthen scent like wet concrete. I think that scent was how I sensed her in my sleep. It's very different from the disinfectant smell that usually hangs near. She moves her hands along my body when she's sitting here. She's even touched my face once, stroked my stubble. I can make up that I'm the only one who can clarify what happened in the morning in January. That she's the mother of the woman in the blue sedan. It seems better for everyone that I stay asleep. The light is hurting my eyes today. The awnings block out the worst of the sun. But in the middle of the day, the curtains turn my bed into a cathedral of light. I threw up. The nurse cleaned it away. Poor guy. He's not very talkative, but neither am I. He told me I'm doing better, though I'm not too sure of myself. I'm sleeping more now than when I just woke up. Next to my bed, there's a little nightstand, which has stuff on it, sometimes. There's not much on there today, but there was a cup and an empty flower vase there last week, and there's a copy of the Evening Mirror that's been lying there for ages. I think it's the newspaper I'm in. She visited again this afternoon. With her words and the white curtains, it always feels so sacred around us, as if we're in a private chapel. Time and time again, she asks for forgiveness, for me, for my sins. She thinks I attempted suicide that morning by jumping in front of that light blue car. I wish I could explain to her that I didn't want to die at all. That I wanted to live for once. It sounds perverse after the fact. The nurse has been trying to keep her away from me. He says she's visiting too much, that there's nothing she can do. But she's so grateful that her daughter saved me, that I wasn't lost to eternal damnation. Can't she see that I drove her daughter to the exact same act that she's accusing me of? I've been growing tired of this perpetual feeling of guilt. I'm trying to come up with a version of the events in which I'm not so much in the wrong. One of the curtains is open today. At first, a strange pain comes out when I moved, as if I were a gardening appliance that had been left out in the rain. I can't look around for too long due to the lights, but I've seen an old man lying next to me. It could very well be that there are 4 of us in this room, though I don't have a view of the beds opposite of me. And around me I see how everything lives. More and more often I'm overcome by the realization that the objects are talking to me. The mug, the phone, the glove dispenser. The curtains can stare at me for hours on end, with fascination in their gaze, as if they know me and wish me the best. But I can hear them murmuring behind my back whenever I'm not looking. Last night, I dreamt the whole world was alive. I cycled through the streets, and every building, every car, every paving stone had a human face. They stared after me and spoke among themselves. They all had youthful features and dark brown hair. Because it was her. It is her. She's present in all the things around me. I cried when I first realized it. She's still there and lives on in everything. Since that dream, I see it crystal clear in the vase, the newspaper, and the ceiling lamp. Her fine features follow me every day. They greet me in the morning, smile at me, discuss my thoughts. Ah! What happened? What did I do? But as I mentioned, I've been pondering how I could make it all a little more bearable before I truly wake up. I think I'm almost there. After all, it must be possible for someone to create so much beauty through a single deed that it atones for all evil in the world. A small amount of good can banish out all the darkness around it. Like how you can sterilize water forever by adding just a single drop of bleach. The world wouldn't be a better place if the accident hadn't happened. Because by saving me, she has, in 1 second, done more good than all the misery I will ever cause. Saving a life is so much more special than taking one away. The one more than makes up for the other. And the hope she has created absolves me, in a sense, from the grief I've caused everyone. Let me put it differently. This earth over which we roam, between windmills under transmission towers, it's the outskirts of industry in which our daily lives unfold. Everything carries the dull patina of technical ingenuity. It's durable, built to last for a lifetime. Sometimes I feel ashamed to exist among all the colossi and wires that surround me. It is a realm of steel, of iron bolts and endless concrete. Everything's so well thought out, every millimeter of this earth, that I wonder if I even have any choices to make. Sometimes I'm guided for days by only my most primitive urges, but the world keeps turning, and nothing ever changes. It is an insignificant hinterland that all our lives go by, each and every one of them, day in and day out. They're small lives, meaningless in the grand scheme of things. The delay in the morning rush hour that I caused may have been a bigger setback in the end than the life that I took. And the whole device has been tuned so finely that it's actually not that strange for a rebellious student to try and see if it can break, so that for once, due to his actions, it may all turn out differently. How reassuring it is to know that some acts have real consequences, that I can do something that stops everything for a moment, that I can touch the lives of other people with my choices, even if it's with devastating results. It's an ugly thought, not a thought I can share with anyone, because nobody will understand. However, I draw a lot of courage from it. I've even noticed that I'm recuperating faster than before. But I am guilty. I know I am guilty. Therefore, I worship her every atom. I owe my life to her, and that is why I see her now, in everything around me, every breath of air that I breathe. I breathe because she wanted me to. I wish it had struck me earlier. The dog should have been enough. That poor dog. It's been snowing this morning. Snow in May, can you imagine? I drove through it. Never seen anything like it in my life. They predicted a warm summer, because the winter's been so mild this year. It was just sleet. A few flakes, but still. Snow is snow. Incredible. I saw it. The nurse opened the curtains for us. They spoil you here. It's a nice hospital, by the way. They have their own post office in here. Did you know that? I love buildings like these. Hospitals, airports. They have everything here. 24 hours a day, like a small town. Like a big retirement home. It's the same with cruise ships. The cafeterias, the shops, the offices. And it's always spotless in the aisles. Aisles. I can imagine us heading that way. As a society, I mean. Just look around you. Everything's white. Squeaky clean. You see that? When you press the button, a rubber glove comes out. I need one of those at home. I mean, everything's changing. Spring snow, male nurses. I think we'll end up living in domed cities in the future. You're scared. In Dubai, they're very far ahead of us, you know that? Their shopping centers flow into apartment complexes, which are connected to the schools and offices. Everything to protect them from the scorching sun. It goes above 40 degrees Celsius all the time over there. You're afraid of the dark. Yes. A long silence. I was afraid. I was the first one here. Do you know that? Right that day. They said it would take a while. Silence. But it would be a long time before you'd wake up. I've been scared. You went too far. You went terribly. He has a gray-brown ring beard, hamster cheeks, a light blue shirt. As he hugs me, I smell something. His body odor, a combination of vinegar and ash. And I could have recognized that smell. I don't mean that I actually recognized it, just that I could have. And that notion that his scent could evoke heartwarming memories, that idea alone makes me feel very small. I've been worried about you. You wrecked everything. But maybe try a new major somewhere else in September. If you're better by then. Don't give up. You'll get the best help you could wish for. The university is the same, by the way, with its cafeterias and the campus. Those were the days. In 100 years' time, we'll be living in domed cities. Just take my word for it. And not only that, we'll live anywhere you can imagine. On Mars, on the North Pole, on the Moon, at the bottom of the sea. But we already live on the bottom. Below ground, on mountaintops of the sea. The Raintime. Yeah! Is that it? Is that all? Did I finish it? Oh my god! Sucker! Here was some pt.3 2020. The Raintime incorporates either in whole or in part works of art that have been made available by their creators under the CC by NC SA licenses or restricted licenses. The full text of this license can be found at. Wow! I can't believe I finished the game. Wow, that is loud. Let me just lower that. Alright, so apparently I finally got to the end. Sweet! It took me like 3 streams, and I'm a little upset that, like, the first 2 that I did, I couldn't continue because I went and restarted my computer and all the data had just been lost. Or reset my computer, I mean. Restart and reset always get me confused. Loud. Press any key to continue. Yes. Continue. Because it's loud. It's very loud. Wow. There's only 5 parts. I like that game. It's a good game. Very good game. Guy went crazy. Epic. Anyway, that's gonna have to be it for this stream. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed if you did. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye!